Het-Heru and Namaste. This is Kasank Ma Kiparu here with another broadcast for you. And this is going to be an exciting one, and I'm going to title it Proof of How the World Will Be Destroyed. So, my intention with this one is to basically show you that we are headed on a path to destruction. I'm going to go into that. I'm going to give you some evidence of why that is. And I'm not just speculating. I mean, this is something you can basically map out given the trajectory that we're on. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that what I teach, it's not about just data. It's not about talking about, these are the people who are part of the cabal, who are part of the global conspiracy. If we can only remove these people from office, we can put in the right people to make things better. I don't teach that or talk about that, because the minute you remove those people and put new people in office, those new people will do the exact same thing as the old guard. What you have to do is you have to indoctrinate people into a new way of thinking, a new way of life. Because right now the planet is polarized in a type of thinking, and that thinking is what's causing the problem. So one of the things that you have to do as a parent, as a responsible adult, as a spiritual being, is to look after your mind, because that is the thing that is under attack constantly by society, constantly by subliminal messages, subliminal images. They are programming you on a consistent basis. Now, in ancient Egypt and Kemet, they had iconography or symbols of what they call the Metu Neter, or hieroglyphics, that would appeal to the right brain subconscious mind, that would program you to for you to aspire to be godlike. But here we have Madison Avenue advertisers who are programming you to be consumers, sex maniacs, pedophiles, and things of that nature. So you have to make sure that when you go home from your 9 to 5, that you are meditating, and you are meditating with truisms, you are meditating with post-hypnotic suggestions, and seeing yourself as Osir, the living God, seeing yourself as God-man, God-woman. If you do not meditate on a consistent basis, then you are allowing this corrupt, evil, psychotic society to put into your mind programming. And some people come along, oh man, no, they don't program me, I'm my own person. No, you're your own idiot. Because your consciousness is awake at all times. And then at certain peak points of the day, it is acceptable to programming. That's how your being is made up. That's how you were put together. At certain times during the day, you are susceptible to programming. Study chronobiology. When that happens, you have your mass media, your advertising agencies, they know when to put out their message. They all are fighting for the real estate of your mind. So if you think that you're not being programmed, then you're an idiot. The minute you walk into a department store and you hear that lovely elevator music, that is subliminal music getting you to buy something, buy a perfume, buy a belt, buy a suit. It's all there. You just don't know it's there. And yet, when you go to a supermarket and you start buying certain foods and certain brand products, you have no understanding or reasoning why you want the brand product or a specific brand, because you've been programmed and conditioned to think that brand A is better than brand Z. All right. Sometimes it's very obvious, like a beautiful woman standing in front of a Porsche. The association is with that. If you get the car, you'll have the woman. That's a very obvious thing. But sometimes it's not so obvious as that. You know what I mean? So the health of your mind is important, because as in the great oracle, the Chinese I Ching, the 50th hexagram talks about the cauldron, and it talks about what are you putting in the cauldron, meaning it's the state of your subconscious mind. What are you putting into your subconscious mind? You don't know, because you're allowing society to throw junk into it. And what happens on a full moon, which is a symbol of the werewolf, all of that stuff comes out because the moon controls the tides of the earth, and your body's mainly composed of water. I think 80% water or something to that nature. So when the full moon happens, all the things that have been implanted into your subconscious mind through the programming start to surface again. The whole symbolism of the werewolf. So be very careful to make sure that you are working toward the health of your mind by doing your meditations consistently, and making sure that you have truisms. Like some of your truisms could be like, I am the living likeness of God. That's one truism, you know? So keep those in mind. Now I want to talk about this whole concept about the destruction of the world. So this is what we have to start looking at. I've talked about before of how we are caught in a polarized thinking process. The timeline has been disrupted, meaning that our ancestors were creating a fabulous future for us, a fabulous world, based on the fact that our ancestors thought through right and left brain thinking. This is how they were able to create the pyramids. They were master engineers, master mathematicians, they were master astronomers, and they were master philosophers, and they knew the secrets of the universe. They knew what happens when you die. They knew what happens when you reincarnate. They knew about different universes, multi-dimensions, because they were both left and right brain thinkers. But however, what happened was there was an effort to dismantle their civilization and kill them off and put in place a left brain way of living. And when that left brain came into power, what it started to do was create the virus we know as racism. And then it started to colonize countries under the guise that all religions that weren't Christian were pagan and evil. Now, here's where I'm going with this. I want you to think about something here. Now, you have these missionaries who were going to these third world countries, who were claiming that these African people or these Native Americans were practicing a pagan religion, an evil religion, right? When the exact opposite was true. Now, I've read this book a number of times, and it's a really great book, and it's on African religion. And if you get an opportunity, get this book. It's phenomenal. It really breaks down the moral values and the benefits of the African religions of Africa, because there are many, you know, it wasn't just one, you know, and it compares that to Christians and their value system and things of that nature. But this, on page 7, is, I found something here that is remarkable, and it explains it all. And I want you to hear this, and I couldn't wait to make this video so that I could read this to you. So pay attention to this. Christians' way of life, meaning that African Christians, oh, let me just take a step back. So what this is talking about, how the missionaries went into Africa, the colonizers basically, and the African priests, they were told not to practice their traditional African religion, that they were now Christians, and they had to practice the Christian religion. And so these Christian missionaries found out that the African priests weren't listening to them, that they were preaching the Christian religion, but they still were practicing African religion, which frustrated these Christian missionaries. So here's what's going on. Christians' way of life, meaning that African Christians do not always adhere to religious and ritual demands that are formulated and expressed by the leaders of their churches. Many times they seek comfort in their own religious symbol systems, even though these may not correspond exactly to those inculcated and expected by their Christian leaders. Indeed, these are often symbols and rituals that church leaders have explicitly condemned. Now, here's what they say about this. At baptism, the African Christian repudiates remarkably little of his former non-Christian outlook. he may be obliged to turn his back upon certain traditional practices which, rightly or wrongly, have been condemned by the church, but he is not asked to recant a religious philosophy. Consequently, he returns to the forbidden practices on occasion and with remarkable ease. Conversion to Christianity is for him sheer gain, an extra for which he has opted. It is an overlay on his original religious culture. Apart from the superficial condemnations, Christianity has really had little to say about African traditional religion in the way of serious judgments of value. Consequently, the African Christian operates with two thought systems at once, and both of them are closed to each other. Each is only superficially modified by the other. Do you understand what this is saying? Basically, these European missionaries, when they were confronted with these African people practicing the African religion, the European missionaries said, no, it's either one or the other. You either are a Christian or you are a heathen practicing African religion. This is the Hegelian dialectic. This is being polarized either in I'm right, you're wrong, or good versus evil. Now, what happened when they gave these African priests Christian religion? Remember what I said, that African people are right brain, integrated brain thinkers, and that Europeans are left brain. What is left brain? Left brain segregates. It seeks to separate. It seeks to label and define things, and that it operates based on a precedent. It is not fluid. It is not dynamic. Right brain seeks to harmonize. It seeks to bring things together. It is synthesis thinking. So when they presented the Christian religion to the Africans, what did they do? They didn't throw out their traditional African religion. They synthesized it. They brought it in and practiced both. They were able to reconcile the differences. They did not see one as a contradictory element to the other. There was no Hegelian dialectic because they were not polarized in left brain thinking. They were able to harmonize the two by saying in this last thing, consequently, the African Christian operates with two thought systems at once. European thinking cannot do that. They cannot operate with two paradigms of thinking because it contradicts. One has to contradict the other. In their mindset, one has to be good, the other one has to be evil. This is how they created racism, because in their mind, color, black and white, equates to good and evil. This is how the left brain, unchecked, goes crazy. Meanwhile, the right brain, again, synthesis thinking, integrates, harmonizes, and does not see a contradiction. So if we continue on this path of allowing the planet to be under the rule and jurisdiction of left brain thinking, we're only going to end up with destruction, because the left brain cannot reconcile differences. It cannot do that. As far as the left brain is concerned, it's either one way or the other. Just like the European missionaries that went to Africa to convert the African priests, you either accept Christianity or you're a heathen African. That's how left brain Western society, and consequently the entire planet, has been operating. And you see this in the form of wars, factionalizations, Sunni Muslims against traditional fundamental Muslims, wars based on this, Democrat against Republican, LGBT, against straight. You're going to have the left brain create these erroneous definitions, splitting hairs, separating things, creating titles that oppose one another. Whereas the right brain will allow for differences and allow those differences to harmoniously work together. This is why the left brain should be in a position of power I'm sorry, not the left brain should be in a position of power. The right brain should be in a position of power, and the left brain should not be in a position of power, because the left brain will ultimately seek to destroy one side. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, is as you see that we are now we have the racial totem pole, where we're now labeling, defining, and creating this hierarchy of people of races and classification of people. Because part of the left brain, we get into the reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain works on a power structure, a hierarchical structure. And the right brain doesn't work on a hierarchical structure. The right brain is always talked about, if you want to look at it in terms of an occult symbol, is the circle, because it sees all things as going in a circle or equal. That's why many traditional African school systems and collective communal tribal systems, people sat around in this circle. If you look at the traditional European system of education and of lectures, you know, during the Socratic method of teaching, the teacher was at the head of the class, and the students were, you know, down from the teacher. The teacher was a symbol of power. Again, the hierarchical structure of power. All right. African systems going through a cosmological ordering of system, and the with the cosmological system with no one position or piece higher than the other, but everything having a weight and a value according to its form and function. But the European system of hierarchical system, where there is one head at the top and everything else is beneath it and subservient to it. Do you see the two different cultures and systems? But African systems, or African thought process, allows for the two to work together. The European left brain system does not allow for the two. It sees that it's a contradiction, and it seeks to eliminate anything that it thinks is contradictory to its ideas. And it seeks to institute a power structure. So again, if we continue on the same course, polarized and left brain thinking, the world will end in this destruction. The only way we can get out of this and get off this path is that we change the thinking of the planet and make people realize that we have to start thinking in a more integrated process. Well, what happens when we do that? Well, we start getting back the wisdom and knowledge of our ancient ancestors, and we can gain that knowledge of building the pyramids again. We start getting that knowledge of the high mathematics and high engineering as forgotten sciences. Because remember, left brain has got us living in the dark ages. And we really don't have an understanding of God, because the left brain is very concrete in its thinking. It can't think metaphysically, so that it cannot conceive in things like dimensions, you know, or alien beings of a non-physical context. So when you talk about light beings as alien beings, the left brain can't conceive of that. It doesn't do well with abstractions. So those things you have to turn to the right brain. So I hope I've made this very, very clear that the origin of racism comes from the left brain thinking. It was created and put there as a virus so that it could eliminate the right brain way of thinking. Now, the cabal, the global elite, practice integrated brain thinking. They practice rituals. They practice occult things. They practice high sciences because they have retained that knowledge of integrated brain thinking. But they trap the world in left brain thinking so they can have the power, again, hierarchical structure. So they can be in power and subjugate the planet to their whims. So anyway, please digest this. Share this video with friends and family to get the word out so we have a clear understanding of what's going on. This is why when you go to church, you see them reading from the Bible. They cannot understand the symbolism of the Psalms and the verses and things of that nature, because they're thinking left brain only, because the left brain looks at it as a concrete, actual history book. They don't look at it from a right brain perspective, as there is a symbolism and analogies there. Anyway, I've said enough. So if you like this video, hit hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel for more great videos. As I said, let's start this revolution. Get the word out to your friends and your family. Share this video to them. This is important information and knowledge that has to be shared so we can free this planet and take it off this course to destruction. Again, this is Het-Heru, and until my next broadcast, I'm in Ra.